Well, it's great to see you again, Don.
Good to see you, man.
Obviously, once again, here we go. Another great announcement coming out today, the launch of Trump Mobile.
Yeah. Well, we were excited to do something like this. You know, so much of what we focused on in the last few years has really been creating value and utility for Americans, right? We did that ourselves. We went from being, purely luxury real estate builders to being people who were debanked and had our insurance canceled. And so we got into crypto to create utility and value. We're doing the same here for people in the mobile space, where people pay sort of ungodly amounts for mobile services, and then they have the add-ons and the tick-ups. And so we got with some of the best people in the industry to create Trump Mobile. And for $47 a month, $47.45, you get unlimited calls, unlimited texting, free calling to 100 different international areas for so many people who are calling abroad. But also what we wanted to do was make sure that we integrate some real services in these for people. You have telemedicine built in and for free. So you can, and as someone with 5 kids who ends up at the hospital, pretty much every other week with something, to be able to deal with some of those little things by being able to call and literally get a doctor on the line right there is a big deal. Free roadside assistance. So when you're driving and you're traveling, if something happens, that's all part of that package. So we wanted to kind of integrate the best of the best, create something with some true utilitarian value for people. And then perhaps more importantly, our data centers, our call centers, are right here in the United States.
Well, one of the things that we've seen so many times is that a lot of these major corporations, I'm not going to name anyone specifically, though, a lot of the money that you go is actually then being used to work against an America First agenda and other folks, maybe such like your father, who support that America First agenda.
Correct. We've seen that countless times. I mean, that's a big part of what we dealt with our whole lives, right? I used to be able to call any banker in this city. I could get a loan for a real estate project, and then all of a sudden that went away. It's why we started doing crypto, right? We had to figure out a way. It wasn't to get into a business. It was, we literally had to do it out of necessity, because we went from being, one of the most popular guys in town to the least popular guys in town. So we created other ways to be able to get around that. We did that with True Social. It wasn't that we wanted to build a social media platform, but the second that they ripped out our platform and cut our soapbox in half and prevented us from being able to get our message out there and attacked free speech, well, what did we do? We adapted, we overcome. We didn't just crawl into a corner and try to hide from it. We went out there and built our own.
So we've seen this over and over again now. So not only do you have the resorts, and obviously the golf courses and things, we've also got watches, wine, sneakers, now Trump Mobile. What's next to go into the empire?
Yeah, listen, I think there's a lot. I mean, the big focus, I think that we've had, obviously, will continue the real estate and the golf courses and the hotels, because that's the biggest part of it. But a huge component of what we're doing has really been focusing on the crypto side of things. What we're doing with American Bitcoin, what we're doing with World Liberty Financial. I mean, I really think that's going to change the future of banking. What we're doing USD1 as that for the crypto folks, really creating a stable coin where we can take banking out of the hands of the banks, eliminate so many of the time-consuming transactions with all these middlemen who are just feeing you to death. That's what I'm most excited about, because I think bringing back utilitarian and sort of democratized finance to the American people. Of all of the things that we're working on Trump Org, I mean, that's to me the most exciting, because I think that can make one of the biggest dynamic shifts for, again, the forgotten American who can't get a loan, not because they don't have a better credit score than someone else, but because they don't check whatever woke box whatever bank is looking at.
Could you have imagined this 10 years? I mean, so we're on a historic day today. 10 years ago, your dad came down the golden escalator here just a few floors below us, and he's changed the fundamental face, I would say, of not just this country, but the world.
Oh, 100%. I mean, you had an outsider, coming in, and he was, how many times has he been written off? You've seen this. You've seen this for a long time. He can't. 10 years ago today, he had 0% chance of winning a Republican primary. 0. All of a sudden that changed. Then he had 0% chance of beating Hillary Clinton. Then he came back and did that. Then he had, we had, after the contrived nonsense of January 20, he has 0% chance of coming back. He's gone and written off. I mean, he's the most written off guy in the history of probably politics, not just American politics, that always finds a way to come back.
One of the most remarkable things I've said is that elevator ride, while yes, it launched a political movement, it launched a political career, it's also undermined, and I think historically later will be viewed as really the destruction of the Democrat Party. They used to run on ideas, may not have agreed with them, but they had ideas. For the last 10 years, because of your father's escalator ride, they've just run on one thing: anti-Trump.
Correct. We now have a team that is sort of battle tested. They had 4 years of hell. We know who the guys that are the real warriors. So it's the first time we actually have a real bench, of viable candidates who are fighters, who fight for the America First movement. So yeah, I think that was perhaps the death knell to the Democrat Party. But I think honestly, it was probably pretty similar to what was then, the traditional neocon Republican establishment.
One of the things it gets compared to the Reagan Revolution, and it's the second coming of such thing. But after 12 years, Reagan Democrats went back, and it's now Trump country, but they went back to being Democrats.
Yeah.
Moving forward, how do you make sure that they stay with the America First movement, even when the name Donald J. Trump Sr. may not be on the ballot?
Reagan was incredible, but the predecessors on the Republican side, were not. These were sort of lackluster people, not particularly bright, not particularly, convicted. They didn't have a lot of conviction or resolve, and they sort of just went back and fell into those old ways. And so I think, again, the last 4 years, it took 4 years of hell for us to understand just how fragile our democracy is, just how fragile our economy is, just how quickly things can go away, right? We went from a time of peace to a time of war. We went from a time of prosperity to a time of poverty, and it happened in an instant under Joe Biden.
Yeah, it used to be where it didn't really matter. You just moved the needle one side or a little.
Yeah, exactly.
Now it's much more pronounced, and Joe Biden showed us that election results do matter.
Yeah, they matter. They matter bigly.
Bigly.
Someone would say.
Yep, absolutely. All right, sir.
Thanks a lot, Mark.
Good. Is anything
Good
else?
to see you. I think we're good.
All right.
Appreciate
It's good to see you.
Folks, I thank God for my wonderful wife, my kids, my country, the greatest nation ever. And Americans like you who believe in the truth, the Chris Salcedo Show will never stop fighting for you.
The Chris Salcedo Show, for the news you need to know.